So I would like to call Dr. Jamshid Ahmed, and before starting the session, I would like to give a little introduction about him. Dr. Jamshid Ahmed teaches English literature and communication English at Government Degree College, Doda, Jammu and Kashmir. At a young age of 36 years, he has more than 15 national and international publications to his credit. With a doctorate from Aligarh Muslim University, Dr. Ahmed has presented papers in more than 20 national and international conferences and seminars. Dr. Ahmed's poems and short stories have been published in various edited books and magazines. He has delivered 7 online invited talks and lectures during the year 2020. Dr. Ahmed is a motivational speaker and has been awarded with medals and appreciation certificates many a times by different governmental and non-governmental organizations. So I would like to welcome Dr. Ahmed to start his session. Dr. Ahmed?
Yeah, I am here, ma'am. Dr. Jamshid Ahmed. Thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. I hope I'm audible to all the
Yes,
participants here. Because I live in a part of the world where internet is, a luxury. So
I was
I'm
there
somehow
also, so I know.
so I'm really thankful to you people, all of you, because I am new to this conference. I joined today only. I'm going to chair the session, and I have already, I have been given the list of the paper presenters. I hope all of them are present in this meeting. Without wasting any time, I would like to reiterate, because it must have been told in the earlier sessions, that we have to take care of the time when you present your papers, because this session, it was supposed to start at 3. It was supposed to be from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., right? So it's already around 3:15. So without wasting any time, I would like to invite Dr. Chandramani, who is an assistant professor of English at VSSUT, Odisha, India. I would like to call Dr. Chandramani. The topic of her paper is Dalit Feminism and Bama's Kuruku and Sangati and Overview. This is the title of the paper. Dr. Chandramani. Please take care of the time. I suppose we have around 7 to 8 or 9 minutes for one presentation. Over to Dr. Chandramani.
Dr. Chandramani is here. Can you please unmute yourself and turn your camera on? Yeah. Thank you.
Madam. Is my voice audible?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're audible.
Let me introduce myself first. I am Dr. Chandramani. I am assistant professor in VSSUT, that is Veer Surendra Sai University of Technology, Sambalpur, Odisha. And for today's presentation, I have chosen a topic entitled Dalit Feminism and Bama's Kuruku and Sangati, an Overview. So I'll be highlighting some of the points that I feel it's important for me to express. First of all, I will express about Dalit literature. Dalit literature articulates the oppressions and exploitation faced by Dalits in a caste-ridden society. Dalit writings is a political form of writing records the cultural and social lives of Dalits. Bama is well-known and committed Tamil Dalit feminist writer who writes about the lives of Dalit Christian women in Tamil Nadu. She is deeply disturbed by caste discrimination that has brought havoc to human race. In her novels, she pens down her own unique experiences of discrimination, mental tortures, and injustice by upper She strongly believes that she should live a decent lifestyle with all people. She opposes the concept of high and low sections of people. According to her, all people are same who are potential to uphold equity, fraternity, and liberty. The obsolete mindsets of Dalits can be summarized, emphasizing Friedrich Nietzsche's popular quotation, I'm quoting, what does not kill you makes you stronger. Dalits are addressed by several names, for instance, Dasas, Dasyas, Rakshas, Asura, Avarna, Nisoda, Panchama, Chandala, etc. So no neutral words have been developed as yet for addressing the Dalits courteously. They are oblivious of their position and participate in various other forms of activities like writing, painting, weaving, sculpting, etc. Today, uh, several Dalits writers such as Jyotirao Phule, Bhimrao Ambedkar, Bama, Baburao Bhagul, Mahashweta Devi, Daya Pawar, etc. have evolved to script and express the Dalit experiences to the world. So as I have also taken in my paper that I will also be expressing something about Dalit feminism and literature. So Dalit feminism is a feminist perspective that includes questioning caste and gender roles among the Dalit population and within feminism and a larger women movement. Dalit women primarily live in South Asia, mainly in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Dalit women face different challenges that women in higher castes in these countries face. They are more likely to be poor, uneducated, and socially marginalized. Dalit feminists advocate and have advocated for equal rights for Dalit women based on gender, caste, and other issues. They have addressed conferences, created organizations, and helped elect other Dalit women in political office. In India, education has been counted as one of the most important accomplishments, which is controlled by the privileged class people in the society. In fact, Dalit communities are deprived of formal education as a result of social, economical, and philosophical concepts. The important and ancient Hindu law book Manusmriti restricts the Dalits to read and gain knowledge of the ancient Hindu scriptures, religious works of Hinduism, and other sacred scriptures. The social stigma of the Dalits deprive them of educational opportunities, and this has been the scenario till date. Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa, remarks that education is the most powerful weapon which can be used to change the world. Hence, if the Dalits are granted proper education and other social rights, they can be counted as great assets to Indian society. Bama is annoyed with the social system of caste, gender division, and community-based hatred, which is unhealthy for a growing economical country like India. She longs to escape to somewhere far away where caste wounds will not bother her at all. In this context, she vents out her emotion in Karaku. I quote, I have entirely lost faith in all the talk of the service to the poor from within the convent. It is possible to live in an elitist style with money, education, authority, and power, and to claim that one is serving the poor. But what kind of service it is that is done without humanity? Unquote. But she always feels and believes that service to humanity is above all the services. In fact, service to humanity can be termed as service to God and can make one grounded to realities and bliss in true sense. In Karaku and Sangati, Bama foregrounds multi-layered oppression against the Dalit women and focuses on the work that is routinely done by Dalit women both at home and outside her domain. She explores how violence against Dalit women is legitimized and institutionalized by state, family, church, and upper caste communities. Her fiction documents how Dalit women toil and get exploited at home and outside. They are subjected to gruesome and violent treatment by the upper caste landlords and panchayats, and the police, as well as Dalit men within their homes. In her representation of Dalit women, Bama presents Dalit women primarily as workers who join the work right from the girlhood and toil through adolescence, womanhood, middle age, and old age, almost until their last breath. Their work goes unrecognized by their spouses, as well as the society at large, and they are exploited at every conceivable turn. Bama believes that her critical works highlighting the Dalit exploitation and suffering is in response to her own suffering as a Dalit. She does not believe in caste system and promotes one uniform human caste, that is humanity. Bama herself does not want to propagate any movement to instigate hatred, inequality, division of people instead. Bama gives special emphasis and identifies Dalit feminism, which would enable her to foreground caste identity that is inherent in gendered hierarchical social structure. Physical appearance and skin texture is also decisive in subjugated literary works, and Bama's work is no exception to these bodily disparities, as her society is an example of differences. She remarks that a girl child is deprived of her basic fundamental rights if her skin texture is darker. Due to these little differences of color, she is not self-confident and always stoops before fate. In Sangati, the writer observed, when I was born, it seems that my grandmother, Vijayama, rejected me. My mother was happy enough, but she was little disappointed that I was dark. In a male-defined society, male baby children are not even made to weep, while the female baby children are thoroughly uncared for due to societal customs. Every wish of the male baby children are instantly fulfilled, which make them feel superior in front of the female baby children. Women and girls are assigned uncountable activities ranging from household chores such as cooking, washing, sweeping, mopping, babysitting, etc., working in agricultural land and industrial factories, etc. These monotonous works are beautifully highlighted by Bama in her novel Sangati. I quote, as for girls, they must stay at home and keep on working all time, cleaning vessels, drawing water, sweeping the house, gathering firewoods, washing clothes, and so on. She observes multiple discrimination and injustice carried out against women section in the society, especially the Dalit women. Women movement outside the house is mostly conditioned and limited in scope. She can step out of the home only when there is requirements associated with the house, that is selfish activities. She had to endure everything selflessly till she breathes her last. Thus, she is always chained by expectation, that is expectation from the family and expectation from the society as a whole. In Karaku, Bama gives description of child games played by children in Paraya's village. The children play their defined roles. The boys perform plays such as naikers, that is upper caste landlords, and the girls take roles as panayals, that is farmhands. In addition to this, the boys pose to maintain shops, and the girls enact as potential customers or buyers. The boys also prefer to take role as alcoholic husbands, while the girls as sobbing and subjugated wives, going through the physical and mental abuses. So Dalit girls are acquainted to inferior position. In comparison to Dalit boys and girls are viewed as victims, as double oppressed individuals. Thus, gender bias operates subtly prevail in the lives of the Dalit girls both within and outside the family. Malati towards the end of Karaku is denied to appear for her examination as her mother needs to attend the fields for work the next day also. She gets annoyed for being detained in her class and her inability to appear for her examination. Evidently, in a Dalit community, a girl's education is always at stake for her examination. Evidently, in a Dalit community, a girl's education is deemed unfit, and she needs to take care of the household chores and agricultural fields. Bama's works are seen as embodying Dalit feminism and are famed for celebrating the inner strength of the subaltern woman. In an interview, Bama has said that she writes stuff that matters because she considers it her duty, and responsibility to share the experiences of her own people. In addition, she also finds the act of writing healing and liberating. She is a sort of public figure who never says no to any activity that is associated to the poor and needy. She believes and fights for justice of the weak and ignorant communities as the Dalit community. Now I would like to conclude my paper by just making some observations of Bama. Obama observes that justice is not given to the lower caste people, especially Dalits. She is deeply hurt to witness Dalit women's duel with both societal casteism and Dalit patriarchy in her own village. But she definitely wishes to see some real transformation happening in rules and regulation laid down at the grassroots level. Bama's encouragement and justification of Dalit women daily oppressive struggle was clearly shown in the preface of Sangati. I quote, oppression ruled and still being ruled by patriarchy, government, caste, and religion. Dalit women are forced to break all the structures of the society in order to live. Unquote. They strongly believe in positive changes of life. They're seeking for optimism in everything, everywhere, and every time can be demonstrated by the following quote of Adriano Bulla, which will throw some insights into the Dalits' urges for better lifestyle. I quote, the journey to the light starts with a candle. Once it's lit, darkness has gone forever. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present my paper. And I also thank the organizers for providing me this beautiful platform. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Chandramani. Yours was a good paper because I have myself, one or two two publications in Dalit feminism. But I urge you to just, to have a deeper study into the topic, because some of the observations were what I should call overstated. I mean, they were quite general, quite commonplace. So overall, it was a good paper, Dr. Chandramani. Thank you for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you, sir.
We have a question.
So
Ma'am, should we take the questions?
So I think we can
towards
take
the end of the section
at the end of the sessions, because we have very limitation of time, and also already
right. We are right. Okay, fine. We have another paper presenter, Anurupa Bhattacharjee. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Social Work, Christu Jayanti College, Bengaluru. She will be presenting her paper on perturbing experiences of employees belonging to varied sexual orientations. Anurupa Bhattacharjee. Please take care of the time, because the first presenter he took around 12 minutes. So please conclude your papers within 7 to 8 minutes, please.
I think she's not here.
She's not here, I suppose. Okay, fine. I will move on to the next paper presentation. It is Srishti Abrol, Publications Associate. She is from IIM Ahmedabad. The title of the paper is Gender on the School Walls, People of India and Bad Manners. The title seems to be very interesting. So I invite Srishti Abrol to please present her paper, and please take care of time. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to the organizers, and thank you, sir, for introducing me. I would be sharing my screen in a minute. So, is my screen visible now?
Yes, it's visible.
Thank you. So basically, the title of my paper is Gender on the School Walls. I'm looking at two behavioral charts here, People of India and Bad Manners. These are pertaining to the behavioral charts that most of the schools in India use while educating the younger crowd. Moving on. These two are the reference book that I rely a lot on for my research. The first one is The Body by Danny Cavallaro, and the second one is A Little Book on Men by Rahul Roy. I would be discussing the specific characteristics going further. Uh, to pick a few comments and the ideas that have helped me in writing this paper uh, are these.
I think she got an issue with internet.
She's not audible.
I think she got an issue with internet, the connection.
So what should be done now? Should we just message her, or?
I think we can wait just few seconds, and if she can't come back, then we can go for the next participant. Yeah.
Hi, am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, you are audible.
Can you see my screen as well, or no?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So I was in the literature review part. I was speaking of how the human body is a very flexible idea. Hence, it leads us to bring it down to few ideals that are very culture specific. This is important for this paper because I would be looking only at the way Indian culture looks at these models and the behavioral charts and not other cultures. Secondly, body is though a natural object, because of these representations becomes a cultural construct, and what helps in making it a construct is a medium. Here, the visual cues or the caricatures that these charts use, as well as the language, the verbal language, the words that they use, are the two ways in which the cultural representation of the body is happening. Thirdly, Rahul Roy speaks of a set of rules that make a gender what it is. If you pertain yourself to this set of rules, you are either a male or a female or transgender, all of those things. So basically, you have to stick to a certain set of rules, visible rules that ascribes you to a gender. Then gendered body basically comes into action through gendered practices. This will be shown particularly through bad manners, through the bad manners chart, where manners particularly speak of how the body is depicted, and it gives that person a sense of self, which can be either male, female, masculine, or feminine. Hegemonic, which literally means to be dominant, is not in what is most common, but what is most visible. Hence, these charts do not talk about what's most common or what you can see in the streets of India, but rather what's most visible, what you could see on the screens or in media or in newspapers, in advertisements, all of those things. Going to the next point of clothes. Clothes here do not define themselves just literally as clothes, but rather taken metaphorically. The body itself becomes a cloth, which gets fashioned and molded according to these cultural representations and the ideals that the culture depicts. The last sentence, behavioral chart tools for creating gender and ideals, fashioning the body, its practices to make it most visible, is a refrain that will occur again. It's the thesis statement of my entire research. Moving on to the two charts that I will be speaking of. The first one is People of India. I would want you to have a clear idea of the way the body is depicted in all of these charts for men as well as women. Though you can see from the chart itself, the height, if you look at just the height right now of men and women both, they are both have the set rule of a particular height. None of the women in the chart are taller than the men, and the same goes for men, while the men are of the same height or taller and not shorter. Thus both the genders are ascribed to a set of cultural rules that they have to follow in these charts. Next, if you look at the body type or the body image here, you cannot find any lean body image for the men, and for the women, they do fall under a little plump or the average body type, but they do not go into the too lean or too fat spectrums of the body image here. Then, if you look at the hair, the women have usually tied up their hair, but you can get an inkling of them having longer hair. None of them have shoulder length hair, which you can see in the chart, and the same goes for men. They do not depict any of them having longer strands or yeah, longer strands. Next, so these were the things that I covered. The skin color also, if you would have seen, was only just one skin color across the charts. There's no not much distinction shown towards the darker side in all of these charts. Aging is an important aspect of the human growth and of the human body, which is not ascribed in any of the charts here because it goes against the association of masculinity, which relies on the power of physical strength. If you show a aging man, it denies the body is denied of that association. And if you show women as aging, then it's denied the beauty myths that are constructed for the female body. Hence, aging is not shown across the charts. I would be moving to the next chart now. This is bad manners. I would give you 2 seconds to look through the entire chart. The first thing that would be very prominent is most of these bad manners are ascribed to the male figures here. There are only 3 female figures that are in the lead as far as the primary perpetrator of the manner, if you see in the 18 blocks that we have right now. Hence, the invisibility that occurs here of the female figure or the feminine is the same that occurs across the spectrum of literature that we have in some cases. Then, adjectives that the behavior gets used that gets associated with are the male behavior comes across as bullying, smoking, indisciplined, loud, unhygienic according to the chart, and the female behavior loud, emotional, insulting, and irresponsible. The reason why these are mentioned is because then these again are creating stereotypes of what bad manners are expected of each gender. The female behavior, if you see, are not expected to incline more towards the violent, physical violent bad manners, and the male behavior, if you see, are not inclined towards the emotional bad manners. So hence the stereotyping of both the genders. They also propagate boys don't cry and girls don't fight kind of scenario, as I had explained earlier. Thus, ideas of what it means to be a man or a woman through this chart is depicted in what it does not, what manners are expected to be bad in which gender in the chart. Moving forward, so behavior charts are basically supposed to be the educational tool for the kids at school, but they also give an education on what gender means, what it means to be a male or a female, or what is ascribed as masculine and what is ascribed as feminine. Thus, it creates a lot of ideals because it is repeated again and again in the mind of the kid as it's easily available. Thus, these ideals cannot
Srishti, Srishti's time is over, so I think Dr. Ahmed, you can call another one. That would be better.
Okay, okay, fine, fine. Uh, this presentation was by Srishti Abrol. Now I will call upon another participant, Ram Prasad Datta. He is a PhD scholar from Guru Ghasidas Central University, Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh. The title of the paper is "What is there in the closet? Interrogating the compulsory heteronormative paradigm through Amruta Patil's Kari and Alison Bettel's Fun Home, a family tragicomic." The title is too long, and I expect that the paper will be concluded within the stipulated time. Ram Prasad Datta, please, over
Yes,
to you.
sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind introduction. I'll be needing the screen. Has she left? Stopped sharing her screen, or should I wait for her?
No, yeah, she has stopped her one, and
Okay,
you can start your one.
okay. Thank you so much. Let me give me. Okay, fine. Yes, is my screen visible to all of you? Is it visible?
Yes, it's
Yes, yes,
visible.
it's visible.
Okay.
Please.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. This is Ram Prasad Dotto, pursuing PhD in the Department of English and Foreign Languages, Guru Ghasidas Central University, Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh. Now the topic of title of my discussion or my paper is, as Sir has said, it's too long, but I'll not take much time. It's um, what is there in the closet, interrogating the compulsory heteronormative paradigm through Amruta Patil's Kari and Alison Bechdel's Farnham, a family tragicomic. Now, what is interesting is I have deliberately made the title of my paper slightly tilted towards the lower side, because there is nothing called straight line in order to understand heteronormativity, or the target of heteronormativity or norms of the heteronormativity. Now, I have taken two takes. I'll be discussing two takes in my latest slides. In this slide, I'll be discussing about the compulsory heteronormativity or compulsory heterosexuality. As you all know, this term compulsory heterosexuality is actually taken from the essay of Adrian Rich, which is Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence, where she says that this is an institution. It is not like a norm, it is not like a normative idea. It is an institution, totally a political institution, which supports the patriarchal domination. This is very important, very interesting, that it supports the patriarchal domination over women and other non-binary identities. Obviously, women is a weaker sex, and other non-binary identities like queer, like homosexual, gay, agender, sex gender, cisgender, everybody falls under this umbrella term called queer, and everybody is queer sex. Every queer identity is very weak. So it is what she says, this heterosexuality is not natural. Rather, it is an institution that is imposed upon many cultures that render women into a subordinate situation. And it also advocates lesbian erasure. To understand the domain of heteronormativity or heterosexuality, I have taken a chart where I have drawn two circles, the outer circle and the inner circle. The inner circle is the charmed circle, the good circle, the normal, natural, blessed sexuality that we all have. We are quite accused to have. And that normativity is like a woman marries a man marries a woman. This kind of sexuality is there, but everything that does not conform to this charmed circle, to this good blessed sexuality, is termed as abnormal. That is the outer limit. The bad, abnormal, unnatural sex That is the, I mean, excommunicated kind of identity. Okay, so I'll be moving towards the next slide, where I'll be talking about the sexuality matrix that understands that talks about major four major four ingredients, four components like desire, identity, experience, and behavior. We all have these four elements to understand our sexuality. Otherwise, I will be like a machine, right? So here, heterosexual paradigm, I mean, what heterosexual paradigm understands is everything like a binary. As Bhumika Sharma ma'am was talking about, it is all about the rational and emotional, like the men and women. I'll be adding one particular thing that will be straight and queer. Okay, so heterosexual understand everything like heterosexual. They don't understand anything like queer or homosexual. Okay, it's also a political institution that disempowers women and queer existence and induces false consciousness into the minds of the non-binary individual. It is established as a norm in a society where all aspects of sexuality matrix are conditioned to follow this norm. Everybody has to follow this norm, otherwise they're excommunicated or they're put into the outer limit, outer circle that I was talking about. Now, the first step that I have taken is a queer text, is a queer, I mean, graphic narrative by Amruta Patil. She is an Indian graphic writer, graphic novelist, and it is called Kari. And in this slide, I'll be discussing how Kari was a very instrumental figure to showcase her sexuality, as she was a lesbian, and she was not able to cope with her sexuality in this patriarchal heterosexual world. So she decided to, commit suicide along with her partner Ruth. And this is the fall that you can see here. And here, when she jumped out of the roof, and she actually incidentally fell into the sewer. Uh, as you all know, sewer is a kind of a drainage system that is hidden, that is much like closeted, you know. So she fell from the patriarchal, the outer limit, from the inner limit, which is quite subversive. What I was talking about in the circle in the previous slide. So I am here. I'm talking about two particular worlds. One is the organized state world that we all live in, and the disorganized hidden fluid world, that is the sphere where Kari fell into. And in this slide, this is very interesting, as this particular image connotes the image of Frida Kahlo's To Frida, where two particular women. Here on my right hand side, we have Kari, and on my left hand side, we have Ruth. They are tied to an invisible vein, and there is a heart to heart connection. And you can see there is one vein that is cut. This, cut vein is actually because of the patriarchal domination, but they are quite connected to each other through a kind of telepathic connection, you know. So here Kari's multiple identities, as a woman, as a lesbian, as a loner, as a jilted lover, as an ad agency trainee. She was working as an ad agency trainee. A poet is also there. Now here, Kari's world is quite women-centric. Where she lives in, there are two women, Bilu and Dilna, and they're her flatmates. And there is another character called Angel. She is a dying cancer patient. There is a complete relationship between Kari and Angel, and there is another person called Ruth that I was talking about. In this slide, I'll be talking about how Kari comes out as a non-conformist, as an anti-essentialist, as an androgynous person. When she was not she was not able to deal with her sexuality as a lesbian. She decided to switch towards that androgynous identity. And in order to go like this, you need to perform the roles that is assigned to you by the patriarchy. So she went to a barber shop and asked to the barber that to cut the hair like a boy. Okay, but barber asked her that ma'am, you're like a woman. How can you cut your hair like a man? So that is where she felt very, very uncomfortable, and but she could not able to, communicate in her way to the barber, and instead she did not reply to him. She said in her mind that, make no mistake, there is no such thing as a straight woman. There is no such thing called straight, as I was talking about in the slide, in the previous slide. Now, when famous comic artist Paul Gravett was asking the writer Amruta Patil, that what is your take about Kari's queerness, she told him that the book is not a coming out tale. This is Kari's queerness is incidental rather than central to her journey. So in the next slide, I'll be talking about the second book that I have taken for my discussion is Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. She is an American comic writer, and she's also a queer character, personality.
Ram Prasad, your time is already over. Can you please conclude first?
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I'll be taking just 2 minutes. One is this. This is the image of her father, and where she is a closeted homosexual person, and he was not able to deal with his closeted identity, so he wanted to push his daughter's identity into the heteronormative feminine performance, and as he was not able to deal with his sexual identity, closeted sexual identity, but there is a difference between Bruce Bechdel, her father's identity, and Bruce herself. Her father was not happy with his sexuality, was his closeted identity. He was not able to come out of the closet. Where on the other hand, we have Alison Bechdel, who celebrated that, who came out as a lesbian, lesbian identity, who came out as a different person, and she celebrated that identity. Thanks a lot for listening to me.
Thank you, Ramaprasad Datta. It was a good presentation. I will give you my feedback towards the end of the session. We have the last presentation by Amphu Terang P. She's a PhD scholar from Center for Folk Culture and Studies, School of Social Sciences, University of Hyderabad. And the title of her paper is Folk Deities and Gender in Karbi Vernacular Religion. Amphu Terang P. Yeah, she's here.
Good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon to you all. Yeah, so first of all, I thank for the organizer for giving me the opportunity.
Just a moment, Amphu. There is some noise.
Okay.
Something is going on in the room. Just please.
Yeah, because of the fan. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, fine. Carry on, please.
So first, let me share my screen. So I should press a window or your entire screen because it's my first time. Can anyone help me? I should press where? Your entire screen or a window?
I think you will find it from window.
Window, okay, fine.
You got that? Activity?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, don't share. Okay.
Have you got that present now option?
No, like actually I pressed somewhere, so can't share your screen, they say. So I don't know where I should press now again. So let me.
Okay.
Then,
So in that case, I think you can just speak out that one.
okay. Fine. Then, okay, so my topic is on about folk deities and gender in Kirby vernacular religion. So I will first introduce about the tribe of the community. So the Kirby is believed to be one of the earliest migrant tribes of Northeast India. It's believed that their ancestors migrated from Central Asia through the Great Himalayan ranges to western China near the Yangtze, Kiang and Wangpo River. From there, they migrated down from the course of Brahmaputra to the Chinwin and Irrawaddy in Burma, and from there enter into Northeast India. So I will be straight talk about the community, then about the religion. So the Kirby, they follow Aron Ban, which is a vernacular religion. So out there they practice of animism. So there what happened there they have three supreme deity, that is Hempu, Mukrang and Rasinja. So there, as a community, how they visualize as they have a gender. So Hempu actually they visual as a male, and Mukrang visual as male, then Rasinja visual as female. But what happened actually when the ritual when they perform, there is no such mention for a gender, like that I will say actually. That is actually when they say is oil put he arnam, oil put he arnam, o mukrang arnam, pi mukrang arnam, o linza arnam, pi linza arnam. So some in English, O great Father God, O great Mother God, O Father Mukrang God, O Mother Mukrang, O Father Linda, O Mother Linda God. So when the actual phrase when they practice, they say like that. So when we see the prayer chant, there we can see the gender neutrality of the deities. So out there, what happened in Kirby, in all the rituals they practice this, they take this three trinity of the deity, and one is pain. Pain is individual protector of the household. So there, when they practice about that religion, so they take for these three deity, but there what they perform. Actually, Kargi is a patriarchal. It's a patriarchal society. So when all the rituals is practiced by the male, where there is no female, female will be always hidden. So there, when the pain will perform, that means they that will practice by the priest, and they will take to the entrance of the house. So that is one of the individual ritual that we have seen. Another, when we see about the communal ritual, that is called Rongkir. So there is lots of community rituals practiced in Krabi. So in
I think we can wait for a few seconds if she can come back.
Fine. In the beginning, I thought that I am in a part of the world where, internet is an issue, but I think I am at a fine place. At a good place. Though I am using 2G internet, I have disconnected my Wi-Fi, but 2G is working fine.
I think no, she can't come back. Yeah, she has left the meeting. So
Okay.
okay, Dr. Ahmed, I think you can actually ask the question and also give feedback.
Okay, fine. Thank you. The first paper which was presented by Dr. Chandramani, I have already given my feedback and my comments on that. I will move on to the next paper, which was presented by Srishti Abrol. The topic was Gender on the School Walls, People of India and Bad Manners. The paper was good, but I would like the participant, the presenter, to delve deeper into the research, and I will give her if I'm audible to her, if she can listen to me, I will give her 3 theories which she should read and try to incorporate if possible in her paper. The first theory is Srishti online? Is she here? Because otherwise giving feedback is not an option. I mean, I should not give feedback if the participant is not here.
No, Srishti is Srishti is not here.
So there is no point of giving feedback, right?
No, Srishti joined.
No, I just joined. Sorry.
Okay, Srishti, I am talking about your paper. I suggest that you should read muted group theory. Muted group theory is has been given by Edwin Adner. You can read the details from various sources. Another theory is dominance theory, and the third one is difference theory. The dominance theory and the difference theory, they are not, they are quite. You can just give half an hour to these 2 theories, but muted group theory you have to read in detail so that you can incorporate, more observations and something more to your paper, because your paper was quite good. It can be improved upon, right? So overall, it was a good paper. Thank you for your presentation. Next was Ram Prasad Datta. Is he online? Ram Prasad Datta?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Ram Prasad, you are a research scholar, a long way to go. The way you presented your paper was quite good. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, my area of specialization is this on which you have presented your paper. I will suggest you, there is one drama by Vijay Tendulkar. It has been written in Marathi. The name of the drama is Mitrashi Goshta, and the English translation is A Friend's Story, right? Mitrashi Goshta in Marathi. I may not be able to pronounce it correctly in Marathi, but the translation is A Friend's Story. The story, the drama is about lesbianism and queer and homosexuality, etc. It was written long ago in 1950s. Right? So you can just add something more to your paper. Then the last paper, which was please mute yourself. Rama Prasad,
sir,
please
can
mute
I
yourself.
present now?
Mustafa Mojid, can you please mute yourself?
Excuse me, sir. Can I present now?
You can, ma'am, please mute this. There is someone who is,
I can't mute anyone here. The person can mute himself. That's the problem.
Okay. He has been muted by Dr. Subhrajam.
Dr. Regin, please mute this Majid.
Yeah, I suppose it's done now. Yeah, it's done.
Sir, so can
we have Amphu Tarangpi is online. You can take just 2 minutes now, because the time is already over, right?
Okay, I will just.
You can just take 2 minutes and just give us the conclusion part, so that we will understand what your paper is all about. 2 minutes only, please.
Yes, sir. Okay. What I did. Hello.
Yeah, we are hearing you. Please.
Yeah, okay, I will just speak it out. So, in conclusion, I just want to trace about that in Karbi folk religion, that means Aron Ban, out there we we can't identify it as gender, is a gender neutrality, but how like when the community, when the tribe, they visual how they imagine is there is a gender, but in reality when the priests, when they practice, there is no such called gender. So this is my conclusion. So I want to trace more upon on this theoretical framework. So I just need a suggestion from you all, ma'am and sir. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, fine, thank you. Uh, because I could not, understand your paper properly because of the technical issues. So I have already written my email address in the chat box. You please mail me your paper so that I will, give you a feedback via mail. So these were all the four presentations which were held in this session. I am as the chairperson of this session. All the papers were good, but my request to the last presentation, to the last presenter, is that you should beforehand, check the settings of the app through which you are going to give your presentation. That is very important because we are in a virtual world now because of this COVID pandemic. We have to adjust ourselves to the online presentations and online communication and discussion. So I urge you to please check the setting in advance and sit at a suitable place where no disturbance is there. I suppose there are a few questions in the chat box. I will move on to the moderator of the session, Shafi Nur Shafin. She has been a wonderful moderator of the session. I will move on to her, on to you, so that if there are any questions from the participants, you may please proceed with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Dr. Neha Arora asked a question to Dr. Chandramani. That Chandramani, are you here?
Yes, madam.
Okay. So, what's your take on Gen X Dalits? Do you see gender discrimination still continues in the Dalit world, especially in the urban educated Gen X Dalits? So please give the answer very precisely, because our next session, the guest is waiting already, okay? So please give the answer very precisely. Thank you.
Yes, madam. I could not get your question.
The question is asked by Dr. Neha Arora. She asked that, what's your take on Generation X Dalits? I think now the after 2000, who born, they are called the Gen Z. So before them, that are called Gen X. So do you see gender discrimination still continues in the Dalit world, especially in the urban educated Gen X Dalits?
Well, I got you. Nowadays, everything is in a changing mode. So even the Dalits are also quite, enlightened with the concept of, rights, their own rights. For example, if I will just give you a small example, as I was born and brought up in Nagaland. So I will just give an example of my native, where I was born. In Nagaland, there are, I should say that all the population of Nagaland, they consist of Christians, and these Christians are, tribals. So actually, Dalits are considered as a scheduled caste, right? Scheduled caste. But I will just tell that in Nagaland, all these people are considered as tribals, and they are also counted as the most civilized tribals in this world. So there, everyone they fight together. They fight for their own right, and I should say that they are quite educated with their rights, and yes, and they just contribute enough to this Dalit literature. Have I answered?
Yes, I think so. Okay. So
because it's a long concept.
Okay.
The answer could have been very simple. It was a yes or no. yes or no answer. And my
Yes,
answer as the chairperson of the session is yes to Dr. Neha
Yes.
Arora's question. It's yes.
Yes.
Simple. It's
Yes.
simply yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shafin or Shafin, and I would like to thank the organizers of the event for blessing me with this opportunity of getting in touch with the intellectuals, academicians, and scholars from across the country, not only the country but across our continent, Asia. Particularly, I am thankful to Dr. Shubhra Jamwal, who has actually, she got me acquainted with this conference and all of you. Thank you, Dr. Shubhra, and thank you all the organizers, everyone who is online and or who is offline.